Hello students! I wanted to give you a little rundown on how to do a question paper. So the question papers are one of my favorite assignments in the class. Hopefully you find it to be one of your favorite assignments in the class. It's an opportunity for you to learn more about a topic that we've covered. So let's look first at this instructions, rubric, and template, as well as the example question paper. These extra resources, the APA cheat sheet, will help you know how to write in APA format. It gives you a template for how to write an APA paper, so that can be relevant for this or other classes. How to paraphrase from research articles effectively, so if you're reading a quote or the description of how a person did a study, you can paraphrase and talk about that in your own words so that you are not plagiarizing. There's also a little guide on how to read a scientific paper, and then another guide on quoting and paraphrasing that could be really useful for you for this assignment. So essentially, what the question paper assignment is, it looks like it might be opening up in my word processing document. I guess I need to pull that back over here. So how to write a question paper. Definitely read through this whole thing so that you have a better idea, but this video should give you a good sense of how to write one. So you think about a topic, think about a question that you're interested in. So we talked about epigenetics in the discussion board for week 2, and we read about research methods for chapter 1. So maybe one of those topics is really interesting to you. Maybe later on we learn about attachment or romantic relationships or dementia or something. So think about a topic that's really interesting to you. So here's one that would be relevant to our class here, gender development. So later on we're going to talk about gender development. Maybe that's a really interesting question for you or a really interesting topic that you're interested in. So think about what have you learned over the last week that's of interest to you? And think of a question about that topic. So, gender development, you might have heard, well, there's more than a few genders. So you could ask the question, well, how many genders are there? What are the different kinds of genders in different cultures? Something like that. So ask a question, and then you might then go look up research to answer your question. These are questions that cannot be answered strictly only through the textbook as well as through our lecturing class. So if I've already talked about it in the video lectures or in class, or it's talked about in the book and it's already answered your question there, that's not a good question for the question paper. The question paper is supposed to be going above and beyond what you've learned about in class about a topic that's of interest to you. So let's say we learn about, well, let's use epigenetics as an example. So we did a discussion board on epigenetics. You thought that was really interesting. So that's for week 2 and chapter 2 for lifespan development. So you learned a little bit about epigenetics and you want to know more. So your question might be, what are examples of epigenetics in humans affecting adolescents maybe? So let's go and search that. Let's find something about epigenetics in adolescents. So what you would then do, we'll come back and see how to write it in a second. So what you would do is go to the library, go to research databases. So this is Salt Lake Community College Library. Click on research databases. You will probably have to log in at some point to get full access to all the library resources. I'm already logged in, so that step's already done. I would recommend you click G in the database listing and find Google Scholar. Oh, it looks like it's gone from here. That's fine. Another option would be click on P and go to PsycInfo. So PsycInfo collects a lot of psychology journals that you can then search through. Up here, now I will sign in. All right, there we go. So I am all logged in. Now, our question was about epigenetics in adolescents. So I'll type in epigenetics adolescents and I will search for research articles. So I definitely want to have epigenetics in there. I'm interested in psychology, not psychopathology, which is like abnormal psychology or problems. So let's say and I want both those things. I want it to be about epigenetics and adolescence. So let's see if we can get it to give us information. All right, so here we've got only one paper. So maybe we decide, well, we've only got one paper that might answer this question. Maybe our question is too specific. Maybe I should think of another topic, or maybe we should check if this paper is really useful. So this is from an academic journal. You can see it here. You can see that the journal is the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry. So that's going to be a really useful one to answer our question. So let's open this up with the PDF full text. I do recommend finding things with full text. It's a default option to search for things in full text. Just make sure that's clicked. So let's read through here through the abstract, which is generally the very first part you see in any article. So you should have learned a little bit about DNA methylation. So let's read over this really quick and talk about it. All right, so I've read through all of that. It's basically a summary of recent research on epigenetics. So this could be a really useful thing to start to answer my question. This might be a really good source for my question paper. So for these question papers, you need two sources at least. One of them needs to be a peer-reviewed research article, like this one, and a second one can be another peer-reviewed research article if you want, but the second resource could also be a website, and I'll show you maybe how to find a good relevant website in a minute. So let's say I want to use this. I've read the abstract. This sounds really good. It will give me some basic information from scientists about epigenetics. So maybe you start reading through this though and you decide, oh, this is a little too complicated. I don't actually understand this. I'm not going to read it. So another thing that we can do is say, all right, I'm going to go to Google Scholar. So here I'm at Google Scholar. I'm going to search for the same thing. All right. So now I have one good thing about Google Scholar is it will pull in research articles, it will pull in books, it will pull in sometimes blogs from researchers and things like that. But with that, it can sometimes cast too wide of a net. One thing with PsycInfo is its net can be really small, really focused, and you're definitely getting high quality sources there. But as we can see, we have one result with PsycInfo versus 20,000 results from Google Scholar. So you're going to have to decide which source is best to search for. You could search both of them and see if you can find something good. So this is going to talk about nature, nurture, and epigenetics. Oh, well, this has full text. Usually if it has a link over here, it's full text, whether it's PDF or a website. So let's check out if this is something useful. This looks like a research paper. Actually, this is definitely a research paper, so I'll show you that as well. So here we have other abstract. We can look through this, and this is some more basic information about epigenetics. This might be a really good paper to use as a resource. So maybe we'll use that one, maybe we'll put that one on hold. You don't need to read like 3 whole research papers for one question paper. If you find one good research paper, read through that and you can use that as your question paper resource. So let's see, epigenetics and early life origins of chronic non-communicable diseases. Well, this one's probably not relevant enough for our basic question. It's really, really focused on a very specific question, and research articles often are. But this will give us a good chance of showing how to read through a research article. So let's read through this abstract. Let's pretend, because this is very focused on chronic diseases. I might actually read this later. I have quite a few friends and family members with chronic illnesses, and it might be interesting to find if epigenetics have something to do with that. Maybe that kind of thing can also inspire a question paper. Maybe you get to this and you go, oh wait, yeah, that is a really interesting question. I'm going to change my topic for my question paper to be this focused and use this research paper. So now I've decided I'm using this research paper. This is what I want to learn about epigenetics and chronic illnesses. So I'm going to download the full text PDF. And now that I've got it, I can read through the whole thing. So read through the abstract. At your level, I would suggest reading through the abstract and then reading through the introduction. The introduction to the paper would start about here. Sometimes it will say introduction, sometimes it won't. So the first part of the paper is the introduction or the literature review. So it's talking about how ideas about disease evolved over time, obesity and epigenetic patterns about obesity. So that could be really interesting if that was something of interest to you. Mental health problems and epigenetics. So any of these given sections might have a lot of information that would answer your question already without having to read through the whole paper. So this is still introduction. And this actually looks like a whole literature review. So basically this whole paper is an introduction. Some papers you'll see a methods section, a results section, and then a discussion section. On those papers with a methods, results, and discussion, you at your level should ignore, so here's an example where it's showing the introduction. When it has a methods, results, and discussion, ignore those at your level. Ignore the methods, ignore the results. They're usually where we've got statistics, graphs, things like that. But then go down to the discussion, because then they talk about the results and all these graphs in more normal language. Well, scientific normal language. So at your level, read through the abstract, introduction, and discussions. So here's the discussion of this paper to get a good idea of what that paper is talking about, and then you can use those as your sources for your question paper. So how do you cite them correctly? Well, let's say this was the one that we decided to use, that we thought that was the most useful. I think it was actually this one that we talked about using. So it's really easy. You can click this little cite button and then copy the APA format and paste it into your document. So now I found research articles that are really useful to answer my question. Maybe my question is completely answered. I just found 3, so I could use all 3 of those as my sources. Here in EBSCO, you can also find the citations for things. So if I click on this again, I can get the citation from it by clicking over here on Cite. So just make sure you're copying the APA one. So that's the proper APA citation. And that will go down here in your references of your question paper. So I found some good examples there of journal articles. A good website to find relevant research that's just being reported on is actually the American Psychology Association. So let's go here to this source. So let's say we wanted to find about epigenetics here. We could search and we could say, okay, there's a magazine article on epigenetics. This one sounds interesting to me. I'm going to do this as my source. Great. I've read through this now. It's really useful. It helps me answer my question. So I'm going to cite this in my paper. Well, one, you can use the example to see how to cite things correctly in text. So the author's name, the year, the title, and then where you retrieved it from. Another thing you can do is go to Purdue OWL. That's OWL is for Online Writing Lab. And you can get APA formatting for citations through this. So APA guide. You can go through here and say, okay, that was an electronic source, and find out how to cite things exactly. Or you can use the instructions that I've given you to do that as well. I've got a journal article reference in an APA format here in the question paper instructions, as well as a website reference. So this is how you would cite a website. This is how you would cite a journal article. So let's make this bigger. All right, so I've now read my documents. I've read the research paper. I found a good web source. So I now myself have 4 good research articles or 4 good sources that will be in my reference list. So now I can start writing my paper. So it should be Times New Roman, size 12 font, 350 words minimum. That's about a page, a little over a page to be safe. So include your name. What is your topic? What is your question? Well, how does epigenetics affect chronic illnesses? Or how does epigenetics affect adolescent development? Things like that. So then you write it in proper APA format, and then you include a reference list. So let's see an example of that. So here's an example that is in Canvas. You can look this up. This one is the possible negative effects of Ritalin. So this is a real question paper that I wrote that you can use as an example. These are in-text citations. So this is the author, and then there was no date, so that's what ND means. Otherwise, you should have the author's name and the year that the article was published as an in-text citation to show that any given fact comes from that source. So Ritalin influences neurotransmitters in the brain, including dopamine and norepinephrine. So I didn't come up with that. I didn't find that out. Like, I didn't do the research to learn that, like the actual studies to do that. Gottlieb did. And so I said this, I'm paraphrasing the findings from that study, and then I do an in-text citation. So here I continue talking about Ritalin. You might have some own personal connection to this. So as an example, I was diagnosed with ADHD in my childhood. I took some different medicines, but I did not use Ritalin. And one reason for that was my mother was concerned about Ritalin as a treatment for a variety of reasons. So that's what inspired me to write this question paper. And so you can include some of that like personal story as well in here if you want. If you're just interested in a question, you can just say something like, I really wanted to know about epigenetics and chronic illnesses, and then talk about it for about a page, a little more than a page. Then include your reference list. That is how to write a question paper. I really hope you enjoy these question papers. I know this has been a long discussion. I've tried to hit on every question that's come up from students. Do read over the question paper instructions, which you can download here, and look over the example question paper. Rewatch this video if you need to. Question papers should be something that's really interesting to you, that you want to learn about based on the chapters that we've been reading. So if we've read chapters 1, 2, and 3, look through chapters 1, 2, and 3, say, well, this is a topic I want to know more about, like epigenetics, and come up with a question about that. So, and then write a paper similar to this example question paper, and email me any questions you have. If you're still confused after going through this, if you don't know how to find research, Google Scholar, PsycInfo, those are two really great places to do that, to find research papers. You can find other web sources as well. Just make sure they're high quality and valid resources. So have fun learning more information about a topic of your interest.